Dude, where are you doing my new intake? I need that for this video. Put the intake down on the table, and then we can play race cars and hot rods later and build the Nova's new engine combination here in a little bit when I get all the parts together. Good? Deal? I knew that Adopt Racer was gonna bite me in the ass at some point. He just keeps walking around with all my parts. Alright, well 1984 called and they asked for their video back. I'm just kidding. Hope you guys are having a good day so far. We're going to be talking about small block 350s and how to build a 13-second car. So, I don't know if this is lost or if anyone's going to enjoy this video or not. But for that person out there that's building a street car, but they want to go have fun with it out in the drag strip. They want to learn how to bracket race. You want to learn how to do some things. Well, a 13-second car is a very fun car to do that in. Personally, my Nova for a couple years was running mid-13s, high 13s. It is very fun. It's very competitive. In sportsman classes, I mean, across the country, you can run 13s and win a lot of races. So if you're bracket racing. So, and on top of that, it's going to be a fun car to drive. You're going to spin the tires whenever you want when you leave, the stoplight, and you can jump Coke cans, scare your friends who don't know about cars, because let's face it, all of us old car guys are going to be like, yeah, you're going to have fun in this car. Watch this. And they go, please stop, you're scaring me. Lame. Anyway, we're going to talk about small block 350s and how to build yourself one that's going to make close to 300 horsepower very easily, and just from parts literally I have laying around the shop. And it's probably a lot of spare parts from my Nova. And for my LS fan club over there, who's going to go, why can't you just build a 5.3 with a cam? It's going to make that much power easily, and you just drop it in. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the guys that literally just got that, say 72 Camaro out of their grandpa's backyard, and he's like, yeah, you can go play with it, go have fun. It has a 2-barrel intake on it, cast iron, whatever, just junk everything, smogger crap heads on it, all that stuff. And it's a kid who, has, say, $2,000 to drop on this entire car and to try to make a driving hot rod. We're not going to count tires and stuff because tires just suck, and we're not going to talk about that. And you'd have to buy those too. So we're going to talk about just literally building that 350 as it sits with, basically Facebook Marketplace and a few stuff you can find on Summit and things like that. So with that being said, let's roll right into it. So we're going to pretend like this is your engine right here. This is a 350 out of this is like a crate motor, Mexican block crate motor. But yeah, you had that intake on it, and you said, I don't want to, mess with that. I want to make a little bit more power, and I can't blame you. So we're going to walk over to this side of the shop real quick at our starting point. So before we get started too much, in the end, this is what we want our engine to look like. It's in your engine, if you go exactly how I spec everything, your engine's going to look like this. So it's going to have camel hump heads, headers, an aluminum intake, a 4-barrel throttle body, EFI carburetor thing. You have good exhaust going through it. You have an aluminum radiator. You'll have some pretty decent parts all the way through it. But this engine combination with the rest of the drivetrain that we're going to build for your car is going to be very close to running 13s, if not like low 13s. So, and it's going to depend on a few things that we're going to talk about. So the first thing we're going to talk about, like I just mentioned over there, is you're going to get a set of heads. So most likely your heads are going to look something like this. And have accessory bolt holes, all these weird etchings on the front of them. And those heads, honestly, I think that set specifically are like a 72cc chamber. They're not good valves. They're not very, they're just not a good set of heads. Let's be real. That's not a good set of heads. So what you want to try to get is a cylinder head that looks, kind of like this. So we're going to kind of break this down a little bit. So this is a camel hump head. That's what you call these because of this. So that's a little camel hump right there. These are a early 60s, mid 60s, hot rod cylinder head that they made for Corvettes, Camaros, Novas. And this was the cylinder head back in the day. I ran these, like the cylinder heads that are on the Camaro, those are the ones that I was running 13s with. These, as you can see, have, you know, guide studs in them, or they have guides. As you can see, these have push rod guides right here. They already have screw-in studs. I assume these are good springs. I haven't checked them yet on these set of cylinder heads, but these are set up, I mean, well. So the main things that why these are so good. So there's a couple different designations on camel hump heads. These are very affordable to find now because honestly, everyone's just going to aluminum. But you know, if you're a high school kid, college kid that's just wanting to try to build something cheap, you can find these cylinder heads for, you know, less than $500, ready to run and drive. Very affordable. These, for example, have 202 1.6 valves. So you want to try to find a cylinder head that has 194 or 202 intake and a 1.6 exhaust valve. That's going to help the engine breathe a little bit, because when you're thinking about this, essentially, an engine's an air pump, and you want the engine to run as efficiently as possible. So having bigger valves is going to help get air in and out of it as fast as possible. And this combustion chamber right here, you can kind of see the outline right here. That's where the piston comes up to the head. And that combustion chamber on these is 62 to 64 cc's, depending on if these have been decked. If there's some different thing, because these are now, you know, 50 years old. That's about a 64, 62 cc chamber right there. That's about where we want to have the compression set up, because most of these engines will have flat top pistons or a little bit of a dish. So that's going to help boost the compression up a little bit, and you'll make a little bit more power. Now with that, you may have to run, say, 89 or 91, 93 octane gas. But that's the price we pay for making power. Another thing that you can do is you can grab a gasket and you can gasket match this. Like, you can kind of see how these are rolled. Someone took a wire wheel or some sort of grinder, like a file or something like that, and you can file these to match your gasket. Which, if you're just getting into this, I wouldn't worry about doing that, because it's not going to get you enough power for it to really matter. That's for down the road hot rod stuff. But camel humps or something like them are a very good option. At the end of the day, your cylinder heads that you want to make sure they have a 194 or 202 intake, a 1.6-ish exhaust, and you want them to have a decent less than 70 cc compression. Damn it. And a less than 70 cc combustion chamber. So it's 67, 64, 62. As long as it's not like in the 50s, you're okay. Once you start getting down in the 50s, so beware for, say, circle track heads, because there's some guys out there that'll be selling circle track camel humps or something like that. And they're really 305 heads, so there's a really small chamber, a really small intake runner, and it's a very big valve, but you can run into issues with those, so I stay away from those. 291, 461, and 462 camel humps are all the ones that you want. And then there's Vortec heads. Vortec heads come off of, say, late 90s Chevy trucks, and they're 350 Vortec motors, and you can find them all day for, you know, less than $1,000 for a nice rebuilt set of heads. And most of the time you can find them for less than, around $500. Camel humps are the same way nowadays. You can find them less than $500. But basically, if you can find cylinder heads like that, if you have a little bit more money to spend, then you can work up to, say, a Brodix 180 head, cylinder head, or something like that. Some aluminum cylinder heads. For example, my Nova right now, I have a set of aluminum blueprint heads that I found for $850. So if you find a set of heads like that, then awesome. Then you're already ahead of the game, and you're probably going to run a little bit faster than mid-13s that we're talking about right now. You'll probably run, say, you know, my Nova right now is running 1256. This is the fastest it ran. So way surpassing, you know, a 1360 pass it, you know, originally. The next thing we're going to be talking about is a camshaft. So I'm going to spin you around right here. And this camshaft right here is probably the higher end as far as all the numbers and stuff go. This is a 280 comp cam flat tappet, which we'll get to that here in a second. And these are kind of the numbers that you want to chase after. This is probably the high end of all the numbers. So you want to keep your lobe separation around 110. That way you can keep your vacuum brakes and everything vacuum in the car will still work. If you go lower than a 110, so like a 109, 108, 107, you'll start losing vacuum, and you'll have to like go to manual brakes. You'll have to do some things, and it may cause issues for other things depending on what your car is. For example, my Nova, I had 4-wheel power disc brakes in my car. My cam has a 107 lobe separation, and now I went to manual brakes because I could not make my power vacuum booster work. So that's just kind of an example. So you want your valve lift. I mean, 480 is probably about a higher end for that, because if you go much past that, you'll have to start doing specific springs and stuff like that. You already probably have to get a set of springs if you're going with either a stock head, or if your heads don't look like they have decent springs, which you can check them. You can have machine shops check them, or you can just buy. They're not super expensive, so when you're buying a cam, you can buy the kit that has the valve springs with them, and that will allow all this to work fine. But yeah, so I mean, these are probably the numbers higher end scale. There's a 270 comp. I'll put them kind of like right here, and I'll list them in the description below. Some of the kind of the cams that I would pick for this situation. This one though, I was planning on running a My Nova with a different intake, and honestly, I was thinking the car was probably going to run low 13s, high 12s is kind of my goal with this cam, and then I found a roller cam, which is what I'm going to be talking about next. So roller cams are a very good option. I bought that cam because it's super cheap. Flat tappet cams are about 120, 130 bucks, depending on which ones you get. There's hydraulic flat tappet, hydraulic roller, and solid roller. Solid roller are more race car oriented. They're racing, higher performance engines, 500 horsepower or more kind of thing. Hydraulic roller cams are pretty much what all new engines have in them now, and they're very good. They're very, very, very high quality, and they work tremendously well. That's what's in my car right now. The caveat to them is they are far more expensive than that cam right there. So that cam and lifter set for that is say 250 bucks, and for the valve springs and stuff like that, you might be out $400. Well, for a cam, spring, and lifters kit for a roller cam, you're going to be out close to $1,500. So right there, I bought mine used for 500 bucks. So if you can find a deal like that, then I would shoot for that. Otherwise, try to save up your nickels and dimes and try to buy a roller cam, because those are very sketchy. We've had way too many issues with lifters and lifter failure on flat tappet cams. And you're putting this money and effort and time into an engine, and for it to, basically ruin the engine because of the cam, because you're trying to save a few bucks, that really sucks. So I would try to steer clear from flat tappet cams like that, unless you have to. You can certainly try, you can certainly make the attempt, but just be warned that with trying to save a little bit of money, you might be going at, 2 or 3 different cams and failures. I tried to run a flat tappet cam in my Nova this last go around, and we had a lifter failure, and it flattened, I think, like number 7 exhaust. And that's why I had to buy a used roller cam, and for 500 bucks. And thankfully it worked out, and it was very similar to the flat tappet that I spec'd. It was very similar to the roller cams I was wanting. So it kind of all worked out in the end. So if you can find a deal like that, I would highly do that. Otherwise, try to save your money, or you can try to risk it and do one of those. Just make sure you do everything absolutely right, and hopefully it'll work the way you need it to. The next thing we're going to talk about is intakes. So if you can find an intake used, that is great. I would personally, right now, for what you're doing, I would not buy a new intake. I would only buy used. So this one, for example, is 100 bucks, and this is the pinnacle of dual plane intake technology. So this is a Performer RPM Edelbrock intake. They have Performer EPS, and then Performer RPM, and that all dictates what the power range is. So this is the higher end scale of that. This one will go to say 6,500 RPM. The EPS goes, say 5,900 RPM, and the Performer goes, 5,000 RPM. So yeah, so if you can find a intake that's like this, you can find Y-ends, there's a Street Warrior, but you want to make sure you kind of find a dual plane intake because that's going to keep your street ability, that'll keep low end torque there. It's going to really help out the bottom end of your engine, power range and stuff like that. Which I was already mentioning the numbers and the RPM range and stuff like that. That will all come down to that thing. So if you need to find the camshaft that is in the power range that you want to make, we don't want to really crack into the bottom end. So you really don't want to, run your engine higher than 6,000 RPM most of the time, especially the stock bottom end. So you want to make sure you match your cam to that level. So say a 1500 to 55, a 2000 to 6000, that's kind of the range that you want to try to match your cam to. And there's a bunch of different cam options and stuff like that in that range. There's a 268, there's extreme energies, there's their magnum cams, there's thumper cams. That's just in comp. There's there's also Howard's cams. There's a whole hornswoggle of cams that you can pick in that power range. That'll get you around the power range that we need. So then we covered the intake. The next thing that we're going to talk about is what is on top of all of that. So there's two things that are going to really affect this, and it's going to be your carburetor, throttle body, Holley, whatever you want to use. And then your ignition. So you want to make sure the ignition is quality. If you have points on it, if there's some older style on there, you want to throw that away. You have HEI or there's CD boxes like MSD. This car personally has HEI on it, so that's it's a very simple way of getting ignition in these cars. And that, honestly, I would recommend that for anyone that's just starting out. Just throw a HEI distributor in it and let it rock. If for some reason that doesn't fit in the back of your car, you can always get an MSD box. They're a little bit more expensive, but it'll get you better ignition. Make sure you get decent spark plug wires like XL Super Stocks. That's what I run on everything. You run MSDs, a good spark plug wire, good Autolite, or something like that, spark plugs. Just kind of a good ignition system to really, make that sparky boy work inside that engine. And then you want a nice fuel delivery system. It's not as important necessarily. You just want to make sure it's not, some junk one. If you or someone that is good at quadrajets, you run a quadrajet. They're probably the best stock plus carburetor you can run. However, most of us are not that smart, and we have to run something like this, which is a FI-Tech fuel injection system. I bought that one close to 5 years ago at this point, maybe a little bit longer than that, for $450. And for less than $1,000, you can get the entire fuel system done on your car. If you can find a used system like that. It's been working great. And that is the one that I ran a best of 1346, I think, at 101 with that system. So they're very, quality systems to run, and you can get performance out of them. The next thing that I would throw is one of these, just because they're super easy to work on. Edelbrock 4-barrel carburetors are super easy to mess with. Tuning them super easy. They're very simple. And then the next one, if you want pure performance, and I know a lot of guys like them, is Holley double pumpers. So there's 650 and 750s. These are there's 600 and 750s for these. But yeah, so double pumpers are probably, you'll get the most power out of them. These will get the least power out of, and then fuel injection most of the time will kind of be in the middle. If you can get the tune right and stuff like that, you might be able to match the Holleys. But Holleys just are like a hose. They just dump fuel in the engine, and they like it. So, so those are kind of the basics as far as making the engine and building it. You really want to make sure, at the end of the day, you really want to make sure that you have a good ignition, good fuel system, and decent intake, decent exhaust. You want to make sure you have headers. Headers are a great add-on to this. Like I said before, throw away, whatever crappy exhaust manifolds or anything that you have on it. Put a set of headers on. Get good exhaust so it makes it sound good. And your engine system, you'll probably, just with what we just talked about, probably around 300 horsepower, maybe a little less. More than likely, it'll be a little less, maybe close to 300 with a 350. And that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you start looking at it, and with, 3,300, 3,200 pound car, you'll run mid-13s easy like that. So that's kind of the basics on how to build the engine for it. So that's kind of all I have for you guys right now. This is really just a crash course on how to build a little hot rod bracket car motor. I know it might not be the most exciting video, or it might not be the most exciting car to drive, because, considering, 500, 400 horsepower is very average now at this point with new cars and stuff like that. But if you threw that engine in this car, which is a very similar engine to what's in it now, if you drop that in, you put gears in this, you had a decent converter, stuff like that, it'll run good, and you're going to be very surprised what that car would do. I mean, I know with my Nova, with a little baby cop cam in it, very basic setup on that. It had a dual plane, then we put a single plane on it. With 273s, I ran 1395 with that 350 and camel hub heads. It ran 1395 at like 99 miles an hour, which is really fun. So, and that was at 273s. And then we threw the 355s in it, and it ran 1350s, 1360s. So, and maybe I'll do a breakdown on what basically my Nova's done throughout the years, and you can kind of base off of that. And we'll go into weight and stuff like that later on another video if you guys appreciate these kind of videos. But basically, this is a prime example of, if you are a car guy and you have car friends and you all are Chevy guys, you all have parts. Basically, you can build stuff out of very little and have a lot of fun. And especially old, 350s and stuff like that. This is basically, start of a whole lot of stuff that we're going to be doing. But you don't need to drop $6,000, $7,000 on an engine build. You don't have to drop that much money on these things. You can literally go find, a $100 intake and, a $500 cam and lifter set, and, drop basically $2,000 on an engine and like everything on the engine, and go out and run mid-12s, because I did that. So that's kind of the basis on this. If you guys like these videos, we'll talk about running into the 12s. We'll talk about running into, the 11s. We'll talk about kind of how to just build bracket cars. And we'll kind of do a series maybe on this. So if you guys enjoy these kind of videos, please like and subscribe and comment below. If you have any questions, concerns, emotional outbursts, want to yell at me, that's fine. Comment those all below, and I'll get back to you guys. And I'll hopefully try to maybe talk more about bracket racing and, building bracket cars and stuff like that, and how to be consistent with all that stuff. This is kind of the engine series, and then we'll kind of work into like the suspension, the drive, more of that kind of stuff, maybe down the road. With that being said, I will see you guys later.